How does a single envelope end a marriage in front of everyone, with cameras watching? What happens when a woman, convinced she's the hero of her own story, receives divorce papers in public, while her husband stands calm, armed with evidence? Can someone who always laughed at consequences survive when they finally arrive? The envelope arrived at the worst possible moment, right as I was posting another selfie with Dale, captioned, "Living my best life." I never imagined that a simple piece of paper could end everything I thought I controlled, especially not in front of everyone who had watched me laugh at the very consequences now staring me in the face. The apartment felt different that evening, not physically, the same beige walls, the same mismatched furniture we'd collected over 8 years of marriage, the same stack of Sophie's coloring books on the coffee table. But something in the air had shifted, like the moment before a thunderstorm when everything goes unnaturally still. I was scrolling through Instagram on the couch, admiring the likes and comments on my latest post from the Harper and Cohen team dinner. Dale looked particularly good in that photo, his arm casually draped around my shoulders as we posed with the sales team. The caption read, "Work husbands are the best," with 3 heart-eye emojis. Morwen. Ewan's voice cut through my social media haze. He stood in the kitchen doorway, still wearing his rumpled button-down from another long day of staring at code. His dark hair stuck up at odd angles, and his glasses had slipped down his nose, the same look he'd worn since college, when I thought his quiet intensity was mysterious instead of boring. "What's up, babe?" I didn't look up from my phone. The post was already at 47 likes, and Dale had commented with a fire emoji. I hearted his comment immediately. "We need to talk." Something in his tone made me glance up. Ewan rarely demanded anything. He was the type to ask politely if I minded turning down the TV, the type who said, "please," and "thank you" for everything, even after 8 years of marriage. This directness was new. "Can it wait? I'm just catching up with everyone from dinner." I held up my phone as evidence. Dale was telling the funniest story about the Henderson account, and "It's about Dale." The words hung between us like a challenge. I set my phone face down on the couch cushion, but kept my finger hovering over the screen. "What about him?" Ewan moved into the living room, his movements careful and deliberate. He sat on the edge of the armchair across from me, not relaxed, not settling in for a conversation. Perched, like he might need to flee. The late nights at the office, the text messages, the way you talk about him. He paused, running his hand through his hair. "The way you don't talk about us anymore." I felt a familiar surge of irritation. This was exactly the kind of paranoid, controlling behavior that made me feel suffocated. "Ewan, seriously. Dale is a colleague, a friend. Just because you don't understand how modern workplaces function doesn't mean..." Modern workplaces don't require you to stay out until midnight 3 nights a week. "We were working on the Morrison presentation. You know how important this promotion is to me." The lie came easily. We had been working on Morrison, technically, and other things, but mostly we'd been talking, laughing, sharing drinks at the little bar down the street from the office. Dale understood ambition in a way Ewan never had. He saw potential in me that my husband had stopped noticing years ago. "I called the office Tuesday night. You weren't there." My stomach dropped, but I kept my expression neutral. "We went to Murphy's to finish the presentation. Sometimes a change of scenery helps with creative thinking." "God, Ewan, you sound like you're interrogating me." "Because you're acting like someone who needs to be interrogated." His voice was quiet, but there was something new underneath it, something harder. "When did we become people who lie to each other?" "I'm not lying." The words came out sharper than I intended. "I'm trying to build a career, to make something of myself beyond just being your wife and Sophie's mum. I'm sorry if that threatens you." Ewan flinched like I'd slapped him. "It doesn't threaten me, Morwen. It scares me, because the woman I married wouldn't have needed to sneak around to build a career. She would have included me, talked to me, been honest about what she needed." Maybe the woman you married was too worried about making everyone else comfortable to go after what she really wanted. I stood up, pacing to the window. Outside, our neighbors were walking their dog, living their simple, predictable lives. Maybe she's finally learned that sometimes you have to be bold to get anywhere in this world. Bold. He repeated the word like it tasted bitter. Is that what you call it? What would you call it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like I'm finally becoming the confident, successful woman I always knew I could be. And instead of supporting me, you're sitting here making accusations and trying to make me feel guilty for having male friends. My phone buzzed against the couch cushion. A text from Dale. Thanks for dinner, beautiful. Can't wait to work on that special project tomorrow. I moved quickly to flip the phone face down again, but not quickly enough. Ewan's expression changed, something shutting down behind his eyes. Special project? His voice was barely above a whisper. The Morrison account. We have a follow-up meeting with the client. Another lie, smoother than the first. Dale and I were meeting, but it had nothing to do with Morrison, and everything to do with the electricity that had been building between us for months. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. Ewan stood up slowly, like an old man, like someone carrying a weight I couldn't see. I want to believe you, Morwen. I want to believe that the woman I love is just excited about her career, that she's not. He trailed off. Not what? Not choosing someone else over her family. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. I felt my face flush with anger and something else. Guilt, maybe, or fear of being seen too clearly. That's ridiculous. You're being paranoid and insecure, and honestly, it's not attractive. I grabbed my phone and headed toward the hallway. I'm going to bed. Maybe by morning you'll remember that I'm your wife, not your prisoner. Morwen. His voice stopped me at the threshold. I love you. I love our family. But I won't compete with another man for my wife's attention. If Dale is more important to you than we are, then you need to decide what you want, because I won't keep living like this. I turned around, ready to fight, ready to tell him he was being dramatic and controlling. But the look on his face stopped me cold. Ewan looked broken. Not angry, not jealous. Broken, like something fundamental had cracked inside him. For a moment, I almost told him the truth. Almost admitted that Dale made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in years, that our marriage had become comfortable to the point of suffocation, that I needed more than grocery lists and parent-teacher conferences and quiet evenings watching Netflix. Instead, I said, "There's nothing to decide, Ewan. You're my husband, but you're also being ridiculous." I left him standing in the living room and went to brush my teeth, but not before posting one more Instagram story. A selfie with the caption, "Some people are afraid of confident women, sorry, not sorry." The likes started rolling in immediately. Dale's was the first. The Harper and Cumberland offices after 6 p.m. were a different world. Gone were the fluorescent lights and constant hum of productivity, replaced by the warm glow of desk lamps and the intimate quiet of a nearly empty building. I loved this time of day, when the pretense of pure professionalism could slip away and conversations could become more personal, more real. Dale's office was on the corner of the 15th floor, with windows facing both east and south. As the sales director and Mr. Harper's obvious favorite, he'd earned the space through a combination of results and charm that I found intoxicating. Where Ewan approached problems with methodical analysis, Dale attacked them with confidence and intuition. Where my husband saw obstacles, Dale saw opportunities. "You look tired," he said as I knocked on his open door frame. It was Thursday evening, 2 days since my argument with Ewan, and the tension at home had become suffocating. Long week. I settled into the chair across from his desk, the same chair where we'd had dozens of conversations that had slowly evolved from professional to personal, to something more dangerous. Ewan's been... I paused, not sure how to explain without sounding disloyal. Giving you grief about us? Dale leaned back in his leather chair, his tie loosened and his sleeves rolled up. At 45, he had the kind of confidence that only came with success and experience. Silver threaded through his dark hair in a way that made him look distinguished rather than old, and his smile had a quality that made you feel like you were the only person in the world. There is no us, I said automatically, but without conviction. Isn't there? He stood up and moved around the desk, perching on the edge so he was closer to me. Morwen, we've been dancing around this for months. The late dinners, the text messages, the way you light up when you see me. Your husband would have to be blind not to notice. My heart was racing, but I tried to keep my voice steady. We're friends, close friends. There's nothing wrong with that. Friends don't look at each other the way we do. His voice was low, intimate. Friends don't stay up until midnight talking about everything except what they really want to say. He was right, and we both knew it. The attraction had been building since my first day in his department 6 months ago. What started as professional mentorship had evolved into something more personal, more charged. Dale saw potential in me that no one else had recognized. He talked about my ideas like they mattered, treated my ambitions like they were valid and achievable, rather than cute hobbies. Even if that were true, I said carefully, I'm married, I have a daughter. And you're miserable. The words hit like a physical blow because they were true. When's the last time your husband looked at you the way I'm looking at you right now? When's the last time he made you feel like you were capable of anything? I thought about Ewan, probably at home helping Sophie with her homework, content with our quiet routine. When had I started seeing his stability as stagnation? When had his reliability begun to feel like a trap? It's complicated, I whispered. It doesn't have to be. Dale reached out and touched my hand, his fingers warm against my skin. Look, I'm not asking you to blow up your life, but we're both adults. We both feel this connection, and as long as we're discreet, as long as no one gets hurt. No one gets hurt, I repeated like a mantra. No one gets hurt, he confirmed. Your husband doesn't have to know. Your daughter doesn't have to know. This can just be ours. Something beautiful and private that makes us both happy. The rationalization was seductive. Ewan was so focused on his work, so comfortable in our routine, that he probably wouldn't even notice if I was a little happier, a little more energized. And Sophie was 7. She wouldn't understand the nuances of adult relationships anyway. I should go, I said, but I didn't move to leave. Should and want are different things. Dale's thumb traced across my knuckles. What do you want, Morwen? I wanted to feel alive. I wanted to feel desired and appreciated and seen. I wanted someone to recognize that I was more than just a wife and mother, that I had dreams and ambitions and a whole inner life that had been slowly suffocating under the weight of domestic routine. I started, then stopped. My phone buzzed with a text from Ewan. Sophie's asking when you'll be home. Dinner's ready whenever you are. The guilt hit like a wave, followed immediately by resentment. Even when he was being considerate, Ewan managed to make me feel trapped. The text was a leash disguised as kindness. He's checking up on you, Dale observed, reading my expression. He's just letting me know about dinner. He's reminding you that you belong to him. Dale's voice carried an edge of disdain. That's not love, Morwen. That's possession. The word stung because part of me wondered if they were true. When had Ewan stopped seeing me as an individual and started seeing me as an extension of our family unit? When had I become Sophie's mom and Ewan's wife instead of just Morwen? I typed back, still working, don't wait up. It was a small rebellion, but it felt enormous. Good girl, Dale murmured, and the approval in his voice sent a thrill through me that I hadn't felt in years. We talked for another hour, the conversation flowing from work to dreams to the subtle dissatisfactions of our respective lives. Dale had been married once, divorced amicably when they both realized they wanted different things. He spoke about it with the kind of mature perspective that made my own marriage feel juvenile in comparison. The thing about marriage, he said, as we finally prepared to leave, is that people change. The person you marry at 25 isn't the person you are at 32. Sometimes growing apart is just natural. Ewan would say that's what commitment means, growing together instead of apart. And what do you say? I thought about it as we walked to the elevator together. What did I say? What did I believe? I think maybe some people are meant for bigger things than suburban contentment, I said finally. Dale smiled, the kind of smile that made me feel like I'd said something profound instead of just self-serving. The elevator arrived, and we stepped inside together. For a moment, we were alone in the small space, close enough that I could smell his cologne, close enough that when he turned to look at me, I could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. Morwen, he said softly. Yeah? You deserve to be happy. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for wanting more. The words followed me home, echoing in my head as I drove through our quiet neighborhood with its neat lawns and predictable lives. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I had almost convinced myself that Dale was right, that wanting more wasn't selfish, it was human. Ewan was waiting in the kitchen when I came in, sitting at our small table with 2 cups of coffee growing cold between his hands. We need to finish our conversation from the other night, he said without preamble. Ewan, I'm tired. Can we? No. The firmness in his voice surprised me. We can't keep avoiding this. Something is happening between you and Dale, and I need to know what it is. I felt a flare of anger at his presumption, his need to control and interrogate. Nothing is happening. We're colleagues. We're friends. I'm sorry if that threatens your fragile masculinity, but... Show me your phone. The words hit like a slap. Excuse me. If nothing's happening, show me your phone. Let me see these innocent work conversations. The request was reasonable, which made it feel even more invasive. I thought about Dale's messages, the subtle flirtation woven between discussions of quarterly reports and client meetings. Nothing explicitly inappropriate, but nothing I wanted my husband to read either. Absolutely not. I crossed my arms over my chest. I'm not going to be treated like a criminal in my own home. I'm not going to hand over my privacy because you're feeling insecure. Insecure. Ewan repeated the word like he was testing its weight. Is that what you think this is? I think this is you being controlling and paranoid because you can't handle the fact that I have a life outside of this house. I think you're threatened by my success, by my friendships, by the fact that I'm finally becoming the person I was meant to be. The person you were meant to be. His voice was flat, emotionless. And who is that, Morwen? Because the woman I married wouldn't have needed to hide her phone from her husband. The woman I married would have been honest about her feelings, instead of making me feel crazy for noticing that something had changed. The accuracy of his words made me defensive. Maybe the woman you married was too concerned with being perfect to be honest about what she really needed. Maybe she's finally learned that she doesn't have to shrink herself to make other people comfortable. I never asked you to shrink yourself. I fell in love with you because you were ambitious and smart and funny. I've supported every dream you've ever had. Support isn't the same as understanding. It's not the same as seeing potential. The words came out before I could stop them, revealing more than I intended. And Dale sees potential that I don't. The question was quiet, but it landed like a bomb. I could have denied it, could have laughed it off, made it about work, about professional recognition. Instead, I said nothing, and my silence was an answer. Ewan nodded slowly, like I'd confirmed something he'd been afraid to believe. I love you, he said finally. I love our family, but I won't share you, Morwen. I won't compete with another man for my wife's attention and affection. So you need to choose your marriage or whatever this thing with Dale is, because you can't have both. The ultimatum hung between us like a gauntlet thrown down. Part of me wanted to choose him, choose us, choose the safe and predictable life we'd built together, but a larger part of me, resented being forced to choose at all. You can't give me an ultimatum about my friendships, I said. I'm not talking about friendship, and neither are you. Ewan stood up, looking older than his 34 years. I'm talking about emotional infidelity. I'm talking about you checking out of our marriage and investing in someone else. I'm talking about the fact that you light up when you talk about him in a way you haven't lit up when you talk about me in years. The truth in his words was devastating, but I couldn't admit it. Admitting it would mean acknowledging that I had already made my choice, that I was already halfway out the door. I'm going to bed, I said instead. In the guest room, Ewan replied. I think we need some space while you figure out what you want. I started to protest, but something in his expression stopped me. This wasn't the passive, accommodating man I'd grown used to dismissing. This was someone who had reached a limit I didn't even know existed. I gathered my things and moved to the guest room, but not before sending Dale a text. You were right. Some people are just afraid of letting others grow. His response came immediately. You deserve better than fear. You deserve someone who celebrates your strength instead of trying to contain it. I fell asleep clutching my phone, feeling validated and victimized and completely justified in my choices. I didn't hear Ewan crying through the thin walls between our bedrooms. I didn't see him sitting up until dawn, staring at his wedding ring and wondering where he'd lost the woman he'd promised to love forever. The Corner Bistro had been our family's go-to restaurant for special occasions since Sophie was a toddler. Comfortable booths, decent food, and a tolerance for children's occasional meltdowns made it the perfect neutral ground for family gatherings, which was exactly why I'd suggested it for Sunday dinner with my parents and Ewan's sister Lena. What I hadn't anticipated was how awkward the evening would become, or how my newfound confidence would be received by people who thought they knew me. You look different, my mother observed as we settled into our usual corner booth. Elaine Vale had always been my biggest supporter, the kind of mother who believed her daughters could do no wrong, and that any problems in their lives were clearly someone else's fault. At 58, she maintained the same auburn hair color I'd inherited, though hers came from a bottle these days. Different how? I asked, though I knew exactly what she meant. I'd been getting compliments all week, from Dale, from colleagues, from strangers. There was something about feeling desired that changed how you carried yourself, how you moved through the world. Glowing, she said with a smile, like you've got a secret. Across the table, Lena made a small sound that might have been a snort. Ewan's younger sister had never particularly liked me, though she'd always been polite about it. At 29, she had the same dark hair and serious eyes as her brother, but where Ewan was gentle, Lena was sharp. She worked as a paralegal and had the kind of direct personality that made people uncomfortable. How's work going, Morwen? My father asked, clearly trying to steer the conversation to safer ground. Greg Vale was the family peacekeeper, a quiet man who'd spent 35 years married to my mother by choosing his battles carefully. Really well, actually. I've been working closely with Dale Harper. He's the sales director, and basically Mr. Harper's right-hand man. He's been mentoring me, helping me understand the bigger picture of how the company operates. I couldn't help the way my voice brightened when I talked about Dale. Couldn't suppress the smile that automatically appeared when I said his name. It was like a reflex now, this physical response to even thinking about him. That's wonderful, sweetheart, my mother said. It's so important to have advocates in the workplace, men who recognize talent and aren't threatened by strong women. I felt a surge of gratitude for her understanding. This was exactly what I'd been trying to explain to Ewan, that Dale's interest in me was professional, that his support was helping me grow in ways I'd never been able to before. How late are these mentoring sessions running? Lena asked casually, but there was something pointed in her tone. What do you mean? Just that Ewan mentioned you've been working late a lot. 3, 4 nights a week. That's quite a commitment to professional development. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. Success requires sacrifice. I'm sure you understand that, being a career woman yourself. I do understand sacrifice, Lena replied evenly. I also understand boundaries. Lena, Ewan said quietly. It was the first time he'd spoken since we'd ordered our food. He'd been polite but distant all evening, present in body, but absent in every way that mattered. What? I'm just saying that most mentoring relationships don't require quite so much after-hours attention. Maybe that's why most people don't advance as quickly as they could, I shot back. Maybe that's why some people stay stuck in the same position year after year, afraid to take risks or build real relationships with the people who could help them grow. The table went quiet. Sophie, who had been coloring on her kids' menu, looked up with the kind of alert expression children get when they sense adult tension. Are you saying Ewan is afraid to take risks? My father asked carefully. I'm saying that some people are content with mediocrity. They're happy with their quiet little lives and their predictable routines, and they can't understand why others might want more. I felt powerful saying it, like I was finally speaking truth that had been building inside me for months. Dale had helped me see that my dissatisfaction wasn't a character flaw. It was evidence of ambition, of a refusal to settle for less than I deserved. And what exactly do you want more of? Lena asked. Recognition, respect, the chance to use my brain for something more challenging than scheduling meetings and filing reports. The opportunity to work with people who see my potential instead of just seeing me as... I gestured vaguely at the table, at our family dinner, at the comfortable suburban scene we made. Instead of seeing you as a wife and mother, Ewan's voice was quiet, but it cut through the conversation like a blade. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? He looked at me directly for the first time all evening, because it sounds like you're saying that being married to me, being Sophie's mother, isn't enough for you anymore. I'm saying that I'm more than just those things. I'm an individual with my own dreams and goals, and I'm finally in a position where someone recognizes that. Someone, Lena repeated. You mean Dale? I mean my mentor, my colleague, my friend. Each word came out sharper than the last. I'm sorry if the concept of a professional relationship between men and women is too complicated for some people to understand. Oh, honey, my mother interjected, don't let them make you feel guilty for having ambition. I think it's wonderful that you found someone who appreciates your talents. Your generation is so lucky. When I was your age, women couldn't have male friends without everyone assuming the worst. I felt vindicated by her support, but also noticed that my father looked uncomfortable and Ewan had gone completely still. Where's Daddy going? Sophie asked suddenly. We all turned to look at her, then followed her gaze to Ewan, who was standing up from the table. I need some air, he said simply. Ewan, I started. Finish your dinner. I'll be outside. He walked away without looking back, leaving an awkward silence in his wake. He's being dramatic, I said, but even I could hear the defensiveness in my voice. Is he? Lena asked. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like his wife just told our entire family that her marriage isn't enough for her and that she's found someone better. That's not what I said. It's what you meant. Lena's voice was matter-of-fact, not angry, which somehow made it worse. Look, Morwen, I don't know what's going on between you and this Dale person, and honestly, it's not my business, but Ewan is my brother, and Sophie is my niece, and watching you humiliate him in public while you talk about another man like he hung the moon. That's not okay. I wasn't humiliating anyone. I was talking about my career. You were talking about Dale. She stood up and reached for her purse. There's a difference, even if you don't want to see it. Lena left to find Ewan, and my parents exchanged one of those long looks that married couples develop after decades together. Maybe we should head home, my father suggested gently. But we haven't had dessert, Sophie protested. We can get ice cream at home, sweetheart, my mother said, already gathering her things. As we waited for the check, I pulled out my phone and posted a quick Instagram story, a photo of my half-finished dinner with the caption, "Some people just can't handle watching others shine. Nerd on our growth is uncomfortable and sorry, not sorry." The likes started coming immediately, along with supportive comments from friends and colleagues. Dale's response was the first. "Shine bright, beautiful. Don't let anyone dim your light." I hearted his comment and felt a surge of validation. This was exactly what I'd been trying to explain. That I was growing, evolving, becoming the person I was meant to be. If other people couldn't handle that growth, it said more about them than it did about me. By the time we got home, Ewan was already there, sitting in the living room with his laptop open. He looked up when we came in, but didn't say anything. "Daddy, are you sad?" Sophie asked, with the devastating directness of children. "A little, sweetheart, but it's not your fault, okay? Sometimes grown-ups have complicated feelings." "Because of Mommy's work husband?" The question hit the room like a bomb. Ewan's face went white, and I felt my stomach drop. "What did you say, baby?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "Your work husband. You said he was your work husband. In your picture." She was right. I had posted that photo from the team dinner with the caption about work husbands. I'd thought it was cute, harmless, the kind of modern workplace humor that everyone would understand. Looking at Ewan's expression, I realized that not everyone had found it as amusing as I had. "That's just a silly expression, Sophie," I said quickly. "It doesn't mean anything." "But you already have a husband," she pointed out with 7-year-old logic. "I know, baby. It's just a joke. Like when you and Emma pretend to be sisters, even though you're not really sisters." Sophie seemed satisfied with this explanation, but Ewan remained silent, staring at his laptop screen without really seeing it. Later, after Sophie was in bed and my parents had gone home, I found him still in the living room. "We need to talk about what happened tonight," I said. "Do we?" He didn't look up from his screen. "Because it seemed like you made your feelings pretty clear at dinner." "I was talking about my career, my professional growth. I'm sorry if that somehow threatened you." "Threatened me?" He repeated the words like they were foreign. "Morwen, do you hear yourself? Do you understand what you sound like when you talk about him? Like someone who's finally found a mentor who believes in her potential. Like someone who's in love with another man." The accusation hung between us, brutal in its simplicity. "That's ridiculous." "Is it? Because tonight, in front of our families, you basically said that your life with me isn't enough. You said that Dale sees something in you that I don't, that he gives you something I can't. You humiliated me, Morwen. You made it clear to everyone at that table that you'd rather be somewhere else, with someone else." I wanted to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. Because wasn't that exactly what I'd been feeling? Wasn't that exactly what Dale had helped me realize? That I deserved more than quiet contentment, more than suburban routine? "I think you're overreacting," I said finally. Ewan closed his laptop and looked at me directly. "Show me your phone." "We've been through this." "Show me your phone, Morwen. Show me these innocent work conversations. Show me this professional mentoring relationship that requires constant communication." My phone felt heavy in my pocket. Dale and I had been texting throughout dinner, him offering support while I dealt with small-minded people, me venting about being misunderstood. Nothing explicitly inappropriate, but nothing I wanted Ewan to read either. "I'm not going to be interrogated in my own home." "Then I guess we have our answer." He stood up, moving toward the hallway. "I'll be in the guest room, again." "Ewan, wait." He stopped but didn't turn around. "I love you," I said and meant it. I did love him, in the comfortable, familiar way you love something that's been part of your life for so long, you can't imagine it not being there. "I love you too," he replied, "but I don't think that's enough anymore. For either of us." He left me standing in the living room, and I immediately reached for my phone. Dale had sent another message. "Hope you're okay. Remember, people who truly care about you want to see you grow, not stay small." I typed back, "Thank you. I needed to hear that tonight. Always here for you, beautiful. Always." I fell asleep on the couch, scrolling through the supportive comments on my Instagram post, feeling validated and misunderstood and completely certain that I was the victim in this situation. I didn't notice that Ewan had moved more of his clothes to the guest room closet. I didn't see him quietly researching divorce attorneys on his laptop. I didn't realize that my public humiliation of our marriage had been the final straw, the moment when his patience had finally run out. I was too busy planning my next move with Dale to notice that my husband had already started planning his. The Harper and Kamar's offices felt different on Monday morning. Or maybe I felt different, more confident, more certain of my path, more willing to embrace the changes happening in my life. I'd spent the weekend thinking about the dinner with our families, about Ewan's accusations and Lena's judgment, and I'd come to a conclusion. They were all just afraid of change, afraid of seeing someone break free from the limitations they'd accepted for themselves. Dale was waiting by my desk when I arrived, looking impeccable as always in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. "How was your weekend, gorgeous?" he asked, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "Complicated," I replied, settling into my chair and booting up my computer. "Family drama. Want to talk about it over coffee? I know a place." The invitation was innocent enough, but the way he looked at me when he said it made my pulse quicken. We'd been dancing around the edges of something for months, and I could feel us getting closer to crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "I should probably catch up on emails first," I said, but without much conviction. "Emails will wait. You look like you need someone who understands." He touched my shoulder briefly, a gesture that could have been interpreted as friendly concern, but felt like something more. 15 minutes. There's a little cafe 2 blocks down that makes incredible lattes." I found myself nodding before I'd consciously made the decision. 15 minutes. The cafe was intimate and dimly lit, the kind of place where conversations felt private even in a crowd. Dale ordered for both of us. He'd been paying attention to my preferences, knew that I liked oat milk and an extra shot of espresso. The small gesture felt more thoughtful than anything Ewan had done in months. "So," he said once we were settled at a corner table, "tell me about this family drama." I found myself spilling everything. The awkward dinner, Lena's pointed questions, Ewan's accusations, the way everyone had made me feel like wanting more from life was somehow selfish or wrong. "They don't understand what you're going through," Dale said, reaching across the table to cover my hand with his. "They're comfortable with the status quo, comfortable with keeping you in a box marked wife and mother. They can't handle seeing you grow beyond those limitations." That's exactly what I tried to explain to Ewan, but he just sees it as a threat. Because it is a threat, to his control, to his comfortable little world where you exist solely to support his needs. Dale's thumb traced across my knuckles, sending electricity up my arm. "You're becoming the woman you were always meant to be, Morwen. That's terrifying to people who benefit from keeping you small." The validation felt like oxygen after holding my breath for years. This was what I'd been missing in my marriage. Someone who saw my potential instead of just my function. Someone who encouraged my growth instead of fearing it. "I just wish he could understand that this doesn't have to change everything," I said. "Doesn't it, though?" Dale's voice was gentle but direct. "Can you really go back to being satisfied with scheduling meetings and planning family dinners when you know you're capable of so much more? Can you really pretend to be happy in a marriage that doesn't fulfill you?" The questions hit like physical blows because they voiced thoughts I'd been trying not to have. Could I go back? Did I even want to? "It's complicated," I whispered. "It doesn't have to be." He lifted my hand and pressed a soft kiss to my palm, a gesture so intimate that I looked around nervously to see if anyone had noticed. "You deserve to be happy, Morwen. You deserve to be with someone who celebrates your ambition instead of resenting it." "Dale, I know. I know you're married. I know you have responsibilities. But I also know that you're miserable, and life is too short to spend it pretending to be satisfied with less than you deserve." We sat in silence for a moment, his hand still holding mine, both of us aware that we were approaching a point of no return. I should get back, I said finally, but I didn't move to leave. Should and want, he reminded me with a smile. What do you want? What I wanted was to stay in this bubble where I felt seen and valued and desired. What I wanted was to explore this connection that made me feel more alive than I had in years. What I wanted was to stop feeling guilty for having needs and desires beyond domestic contentment. I want to not have to choose, I admitted. Maybe you don't have to. Maybe there's a way to have both, the security of your family and the fulfillment of being truly understood. The suggestion hung between us, loaded with possibility and danger. We walked back to the office together, and I was so absorbed in our conversation that I didn't notice the looks we were getting from colleagues. Didn't see Janet from accounting watching us with raised eyebrows, or Mike from IT taking a photo as we laughed at something Dale had said. I didn't realize that our discreet coffee date had been anything but discreet, or that office gossip traveled faster than email. The first sign of trouble came around noon, when my friend Carla from HR stopped by my desk. Hey, can I talk to you for a minute? Privately. We walked to an empty conference room, and Carla closed the door behind us. She was a few years older than me, with the kind of professional demeanor that made her good at her job but hard to read. I'm going to be direct because I like you, she said without preamble. People are talking. About what? About you and Dale Harper. About the coffee dates, the late nights, the way you two look at each other. About the fact that you've been posting on social media like a single woman while your husband looks increasingly miserable at company events. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. Dale is my mentor. We have a professional relationship. Morwen, I've been in HR for 8 years. I know the difference between mentoring and flirting, and what I've been seeing lately isn't professional development. So, what are you saying? I'm saying you need to be careful. Harper & Co. has policies about workplace relationships, especially when there's a power differential. I'm saying that your personal brand is becoming a liability, and that's going to impact your career prospects. My personal brand? Carla pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot of my Instagram. It was the post from the team dinner, the one where I'd called Dale my work husband. This was posted while you were at a company event. It's been shared in several workplace gossip groups, along with speculation about what's really going on between you two. I stared at the image, seeing it suddenly through different eyes. What had felt like harmless fun now looked unprofessional, inappropriate. I was just being friendly, I said weakly. I know, but perception is reality, especially in a corporate environment. And right now, the perception is that you're having an affair with a senior executive. That's ridiculous. People are just jealous because Dale recognizes my potential. Carla sighed. Look, I'm not here to judge your personal life, but I am here to tell you that this situation is becoming a problem. Ms. Kim wants to see you in her office at 3 o'clock. Ms. Kim was the HR director, a stern woman in her 50s who had a reputation for handling delicate situations with ruthless efficiency. What does she want to talk about? Professional conduct, social media policies, the importance of maintaining appropriate boundaries in the workplace. Carla's expression was sympathetic but firm. Morwen, I'm telling you this as a friend. You need to decide what's more important to you, your career or whatever this thing with Dale is. Because if you keep going down this path, you're going to lose both. She left me alone in the conference room, staring at my phone and feeling like the walls were closing in. I scrolled through my recent posts, seeing them now through the lens of office gossip and corporate policies. Had I really been that obvious? Had I really been that careless? A text from Dale interrupted my spiral. Everything okay? You looked upset when you came back from lunch. I typed back, HR wants to talk to me. About us. His response came immediately. Don't worry, there is no us officially. Just stick to the mentoring story. You're an ambitious employee seeking professional guidance. Nothing wrong with that. His calm confidence was reassuring. but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in deeper water than I'd realized. The meeting with Ms. Kim was every bit as uncomfortable as I'd expected. She was professional but direct, reminding me of company policies about workplace relationships and social media conduct. She didn't accuse me of anything explicitly, but the message was clear. I was being watched, and my behavior was being evaluated. "I understand that you're ambitious, Ms. Vale," she said as the meeting concluded. "Ambition is a valuable trait, but so is judgment. I trust that you'll use good judgment going forward." I left her office feeling shaken and defensive. This was exactly what Dale had warned me about: small-minded people trying to tear down a woman who refused to stay in her assigned box. The fact that they were disguising their jealousy as concern about professional conduct only made it more insidious. I spent the rest of the afternoon crafting what I thought was a clever response. That evening, I posted a new Instagram story. Funny how people get uncomfortable when a woman refuses to play small but know your worth and rise above as sorry not sorry. The post got dozens of likes and supportive comments. Dale's was among the first. "Never apologize for being extraordinary." But I didn't see the screenshot that Lena sent to Ewan, or the forwarded emails that were making their way through both our workplaces. I didn't realize that my defiant social media presence was creating a permanent record of my choices, a digital trail that would be impossible to deny or explain away. I was too busy feeling victimized and misunderstood to notice that I was systematically destroying my reputation, my marriage, and my relationship with everyone who had ever cared about me. The reckoning was coming, but I was too intoxicated by Dale's validation and my own sense of righteousness to see it approaching. The silence in our house had become deafening. 3 weeks had passed since the HR meeting, and Ewan had retreated so far into himself that we barely spoke, beyond the necessities of coordinating Sophie's schedule. He worked late, left early, and spent his evenings in the guest room with his laptop and a closed door. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself his withdrawal was proof of everything Dale had been saying about small-minded people who couldn't handle watching others grow. But late at night, when the house was quiet and I was alone with my thoughts, I missed him. I missed us, or at least the memory of what we used to be. "You seem distracted," Dale observed as we sat in his office on a Thursday evening. It had become our routine, staying late to work on projects that somehow always turned into long conversations about life, ambition, and the courage to pursue what you really wanted. "Just thinking about everything that's changed," I said, curled in the chair across from his desk. The professional distance we'd maintained for months had gradually dissolved into something more intimate, more dangerous. "Change is hard," he agreed, moving around the desk to perch on the edge closer to me. "Especially when the people who are supposed to support you are making it harder instead of easier." Ewan barely speaks to me anymore. He acts like I've committed some terrible crime by having a friend who believes in me. Maybe that's for the best. Dale's voice was gentle but direct. Maybe this is the universe's way of showing you that you've outgrown that relationship. The suggestion should have shocked me, but it didn't. Over the past month, Dale had been slowly, carefully planting seeds of doubt about my marriage, helping me see all the ways that Ewan held me back, all the compromises I'd made to maintain domestic peace. "I have a daughter," I said, but without conviction, "and you'd be a better mother if you were happy. Children need to see their parents living authentically, pursuing their dreams. What kind of example are you setting for Sophie if you stay trapped in a marriage that doesn't fulfill you?" It was a seductive argument, one that transformed my guilt into righteousness. I wasn't being selfish by wanting more. I was being brave. I wasn't abandoning my family. I was showing my daughter what it looked like to refuse to settle. "Sometimes I think about what it would be like," I admitted, "to start over, to build a life with someone who really understands me." Dale reached out and touched my face, his thumb tracing along my cheekbone. "You don't have to just think about it, Morwen." You could have it. We could have it. The words hung in the air between us, loaded with possibility and promise. This was the moment I'd been building toward for months, the moment when fantasy could become reality. Dale, I'm serious. I've been thinking about this for weeks. About us. About what we could be together. You're wasted in that suburban life, Morwen. You're meant for bigger things, better things. We could travel. We could build something amazing together. We could... His phone buzzed with a text, interrupting the moment. He glanced at it and frowned. Everything okay? I asked. Just work stuff. Where were we? But the spell had been broken. Reality crept back in. The late hour, the empty office building, the fact that I was married and sitting in another man's office, talking about running away together. I should go home, I said, standing up quickly. Morwen, wait. He caught my hand. Don't let fear make your decisions. Don't let other people's limitations become your limitations. I'm not afraid, I said, but even I could hear the lie in my voice. Then prove it. Come away with me this weekend. Just the two of us. Somewhere we can talk without interruptions, without judgment. Let me show you what your life could be like. The invitation was everything I'd been wanting and everything I'd been afraid of. A weekend away would cross every line we'd been dancing around for months. There would be no going back, no pretending it was just friendship or mentoring. I can't just disappear for a weekend. I have responsibilities. You have one life, Morwen, one chance to be happy. Don't waste it trying to make everyone else comfortable. I drove home in a daze, Dale's words echoing in my head. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I'd almost convinced myself that he was right, that I deserved happiness, that I deserved love, that I deserved someone who saw my potential instead of just my function. The house was dark except for the light in Ewan's temporary bedroom. I could hear him moving around, probably getting ready for another night of sleeping separately from his wife. I knocked softly on the guest room door. Come in, he said, sounding tired. I found him sitting on the bed with his laptop, surrounded by papers and file folders. He looked older than I remembered, worn down by weeks of tension and uncertainty. We need to talk, I said. Do we? He didn't look up from his screen. Because I feel like we've said everything that needs to be said. Ewan, this is ridiculous. We're living like strangers in our own house. Sophie's starting to ask questions and... Sophie asked me yesterday if Mommy and Daddy were getting divorced. The words hit like a physical blow. What did you tell her? I told her that sometimes grown-ups have problems they need to work out, and that no matter what happens, we both love her very much. You told our 7-year-old that we might get divorced. I told our 7-year-old the truth. He finally looked at me, and I was startled by the exhaustion in his eyes. Which is more than you've been doing lately. What's that supposed to mean? It means that I know about the weekend trip Dale has been planning. It means that I know you've been telling people at work that your marriage is complicated and that you're figuring things out. It means that I know you've been living a double life for months, and I'm tired of pretending I don't see it. My stomach dropped. How do you... No, because people talk, Morwen. Because your sister posts everything on social media. Because you've been so careless about covering your tracks that even Sophie's teacher asked if everything was okay at home. I felt exposed, caught, but also angry at being monitored and judged. So what? You've been spying on me? I've been watching my marriage fall apart in real time while my wife falls in love with another man. His voice was calm, but there was something underneath it that I'd never heard before. Something final. I'm not in love with Dale. He's my friend, my mentor. Stop. The word was quiet but absolute. Just stop lying, Morwen. To me, to yourself, to everyone. We both know what this is. The truth hung between us like a chasm. I could have denied it, could have kept up the pretense of innocence. Instead, I found myself saying, and what if I am? What if I've found someone who actually sees me, who believes in me, who wants to build something amazing together? Ewan nodded slowly, like I'd confirmed something he'd been expecting. Then I guess we have our answer. What answer? He closed his laptop and looked at me directly. I filed for divorce yesterday. The words hit like a truck. You what? I filed for divorce. I'm done competing with another man for my wife's attention. I'm done being made to feel like I'm not enough, like our family isn't enough. I'm done watching you humiliate our marriage in public while you pursue someone else. Ewan, you can't just... I can. And I did. He stood up and moved to the dresser, pulling out a manila envelope. These are for you. You'll be served officially tomorrow, but I wanted you to hear it from me first. I stared at the envelope like it was a snake. This is insane. You're throwing away 8 years of marriage because I have a male friend? I'm ending a marriage that you already left months ago. His voice was steady, resolved. I'm just making it official. What about Sophie? What about our family? Sophie will be fine. Kids are resilient, and she'll be better off with parents who are honest about their feelings instead of living a lie. He handed me the envelope. And as for our family, you made your choice, Morwen. You chose Dale. I'm just accepting that choice and moving forward. I took the papers with shaking hands, still not quite believing this was happening. Ewan, please, can't we try counseling? Can't we? No. The finality in his voice was devastating. I won't beg for my wife's love. I won't compete with another man for your attention. And I won't teach my daughter that it's acceptable to treat people who love you like they're disposable. I never said you were disposable. You didn't have to say it. You showed it. Every late night, every secret text, every social media post celebrating another man. Every time you chose him over us, you showed me exactly how disposable I am. I wanted to argue, to defend myself, to explain that it wasn't that simple. But looking at his face, calm, resolved, done, I realized that explanations were pointless. He'd made up his mind, and nothing I said would change it. So what now? I asked. Now, you're free to pursue whatever makes you happy, and so am I. I left the guest room, clutching the divorce papers, my head spinning with the reality of what had just happened. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Ewan was supposed to fight for me, supposed to beg me to stay, supposed to promise to change and be more exciting and appreciative. Instead, he'd just let me go. I called Dale immediately, needing his support, his perspective, his assurance that I was making the right choice. He filed for divorce, I said as soon as he answered. There was a pause. How do you feel about that? Shocked, hurt. I can't believe he'd just give up on us like that. Maybe he's doing you a favor. Maybe he's setting you free to be with someone who actually deserves you. Maybe, I said, but something in his tone felt different, distant. Look, Morwen, this is a lot to process. Maybe we should take some time to think about what this means, what we both want going forward. What do you mean? I mean that divorce is complicated, custody battles, financial settlements, public scrutiny. It's going to be messy for a while. The subtext was clear. He was backing away, now that the fantasy was becoming reality, now that pursuing me would mean dealing with the actual consequences of breaking up a family. Dale, you said... I know what I said, and I meant it, but I also think we should be smart about this, take things slow, see how everything shakes out. I hung up feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. Ewan was done with me, Dale was having second thoughts, and I was left holding divorce papers and wondering how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I lay in our empty bedroom, staring at the ceiling and trying to figure out how I'd gotten here, how I'd gone from being a wife and mother to being a soon-to-be divorcee whose affair partner was already distancing himself from the mess he'd helped create. By morning, I'd convinced myself that this was all a misunderstanding, that once the initial shock wore off, everyone would come to their senses. Ewan would realize he was being hasty. Dale would remember how good we were together, and somehow everything would work out. I was wrong about everything. The process server found me at the corner bistro on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 days after Ewan had given me the preliminary papers. I'd been meeting my sister Kara for lunch, desperately needing someone to validate my version of events, someone to agree that Ewan was being unreasonable and that I was the victim in this situation. Morwen Vale. The woman was professional but not unkind, wearing a simple business suit and carrying an official-looking folder. Yes? You're being served. She handed me the papers with the same casual efficiency someone might use to deliver a pizza. Have a good day. I stared at the documents, my hands shaking as I read the official language that was dissolving my marriage in legal terms. Irreconcilable differences, petition for dissolution of marriage, custody arrangements, asset division. Oh my God, Kara breathed, reading over my shoulder. He actually did it. He actually filed for divorce. The restaurant suddenly felt too small, too public. Other diners were glancing our way, probably recognizing the scene for what it was, a marriage ending in real time, complete with legal documentation and public humiliation. I need to call him, I said, fumbling for my phone. I need to explain. Explain what? Kara asked. Morwen, you've been having an emotional affair for months. You've been posting about it on social media, humiliating him in front of friends and family. What exactly are you going to explain? Her words stung, because they carried a note of judgment I hadn't expected from my biggest supporter. I thought you were on my side, I said. I am on your side, but I'm also not blind. She gestured to the papers spread across our table. You wanted excitement, you wanted passion, you wanted someone who saw your potential. Well, you got it. But you also destroyed your marriage in the process. I called Ewan anyway, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried 3 more times with the same result. Finally, I texted, "We need to talk. This is insane." His response came an hour later. My lawyer will handle all communication going forward. Please direct any questions to the number listed in the documents. The formality of it was devastating. 8 years of marriage, and he was directing me to his attorney like I was a stranger. I drove home in a daze, the divorce papers on the passenger seat like a passenger I couldn't ignore. The house felt different when I walked in, smaller somehow and emptier. Sophie was at school, and Ewan was apparently at work, leaving me alone with the wreckage of my choices. I called Dale, needing his support, his reassurance that I was doing the right thing. He served me, I said when he answered. The divorce papers, it's really happening. There was a pause. How are you holding up? I don't know. Scared, I guess. This all feels so sudden. Maybe sudden is good. Maybe it's better to rip the Band-Aid off instead of dragging things out. Something in his tone made me pause. Dale, are you okay? You sound distant. I'm fine. Just processing everything, you know? This changes things. Changes things how? Another pause, longer this time. Morwen, I think we need to be realistic about what's happening here. You're about to go through a messy divorce. There's going to be custody battles, financial disputes, public scrutiny. It's going to be complicated. So maybe we should take a step back, let the dust settle, see how everything plays out. The words hit like a physical blow. Are you breaking up with me? We were never really together, were we? Not officially. We were just exploring possibilities. Exploring possibilities? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Dale, you told me I deserved better. You told me I was wasted in my marriage. You encouraged me to choose happiness, to choose you. I encouraged you to choose yourself, to be honest about what you wanted. And what I wanted was you. What you wanted was excitement, validation, someone who saw your potential. And you got that. But now you need to figure out what comes next. And I'm not sure I'm the right person to help you with that. Dale's tone made it obvious he was backing away now, that the fantasy had turned into custody schedules and real consequences. He liked being the secret excitement, not the public partner with an ex-husband and a child in the middle. I hung up and felt emptier than I ever had. The weeks became a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and stiff custody talks. Ewan stayed polite but cold, like we were negotiating a contract, not ending 8 years. Sophie turned clingy and confused. Meanwhile, Dale kept getting busy, suddenly worried about boundaries now that everything was public, and friends who once cheered my growth started judging what it had cost. Then I saw the post that finished me. Dale announcing he was in a relationship with a younger coworker in LA, smiling in expensive places like nothing had happened. I realized I'd been replaced before I was even officially free. When I called, he didn't deny it. He just said it wasn't practical, implied I'd misunderstood what we were, and told me I'd be fine, then hung up. That night, I looked at the wreckage. My marriage, my stability, my friendships, my reputation, and the man I'd risked everything for. What I'd gained didn't feel like freedom. It felt like loneliness with a nicer label. The final decree text came from Ewan's attorney, and that was it. Our life reduced to documents and schedules. I scrolled old photos, realizing the better I chased was empty, and the boring life I escaped had been the real treasure. Then Dale posted again, flashing what looked like an engagement ring, and I finally understood. Some choices don't come with a redo.